Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Robert William Safranski. I was born in Warren, Minnesota, and attended grade school and high school in Stephen. Graduated in 1966. Spent that summer farming, and in the winter time, I had planned to go to college, but facing the Army and other people were going in, so I volunteered for the draft probably in December because the weather was cooler in the winter and I didn't want to go down to Fort Leonard Wood in June. So I ended up going to Fort Bliss, Texas.
So is that where basic was?
Yes, that was my basic training.
How'd you get there?
We flew from Fargo to Sioux Falls, boarded a bigger plane with more troops, and then flew directly to El Paso, Texas.
When you say we, did you know anybody?
I don't think so. It was just a group, yeah.
Nobody from Stephen
No,
or Argyle or surrounding area?
No.
Okay.
No.
So you're in Fort Bliss, Texas, and
Yes.
how'd that go for you?
Well, like everything else, the first meal, the breakfast, was terrible. They made us eat it all. And then we stood in line stood at attention for hours waiting for them to go through all the nudie books and stuff people brought. So they threw them away. And we marched around, learned to march. First physical training we had, push-ups and all these things. We did them in a parking lot, and it was like little stones covering the tar. And the first time I did push-ups on that, my hands were raw. And I'm like, wow, they're probably going to switch us to grass or another field, later on. They never did. Our hands are pretty tough doing push-ups on that gravel. And in Texas, that part of Texas, in the wintertime, it's really cold at night. In fact, it snowed a few times. But by noon, it was 80 degrees. So if one person wore a jacket in the morning, whole platoon had to wear a jacket. Well, you couldn't be out doing these things with a jacket on in the afternoon, so nobody wore a jacket. We sat out there just freezing like crazy.
Yeah.
So we made it through all the...
So what's some of the things you did in basic? I mean, I know you went to a lot of training, classroom training, and marched a lot, but what are some of the other things like?
Well, we went to the rifle range. We did a lot of marching. We did those night maneuvers several times. I was lucky I didn't get picked the road guard, which was terrible, because those guys really had to run.
Explain a road guard, because a lot of people don't know what that's
You're
about.
in a platoon, say you're even in the back part of it, when you come into a road crossing, you got to run and get ahead of everybody. And we're marching pretty fast anyway. Stop at the crossing and then stop traffic if there's traffic coming so we can pass. And then when we get past, everybody's passed, they got to run and catch up and get back to the original position. It's not a real good job.
Yeah. And so, did you bivouac or do anything?
Yes.
Field?
Yes. We went out to our bivouac toward the end of our training, of course. And we did night shooting at night with the night scopes. And we threw hand grenades and all this stuff. And the next day we're supposed to have our 12-mile force march across the desert. And that's tough walking because you sink more than you go. And guess what? That night there was a snowstorm. All of our little tents blew down. And we all ended up in the main tent, which almost blew down. And the next day it was still snowing and blowing about 60 miles an hour. So we got out of our force march.
Okay. That worked out well for you.
Yes, I still think about it, if I would have made it or not.
So did you do gas chambers, anything like
Yes, we did the gas chambers,
that?
And
66, I'm guessing you crawled under machine gun fire?
yes, the live rounds going over your head. We
Yep.
did it at night, and there was bunkers. They didn't even tell us about them, but if you,
Blue?
when they went to go around them or were near them, you almost left the ground. It was a pretty loud bang.
Pretty intense, yeah.
Yes, yes. And they always told us, oh, you stand up, you're dead. And some people have. Well, I just crawled and got through it.
Yep. So you get through basic training, do you have a graduation or anything?
Yes. Yeah, we had graduation, and yes.
What was the closest big town in
El
Fort
Paso.
El Paso? Did you get to go? Did you get leave to go there at all?
We weren't supposed to, but yes, we snuck away a few times. Went downtown, which was a kind of a disaster area. A lot of bums, and
Yeah.
people wanted to take you to Juarez, which I don't even know. We never went on those trips.
Yeah. So then you had orders for.
Fort Belvoir, Virginia. My orders came down. I don't remember the exact what it was, but it was Missile Equipment Engineer School.
So that was your MOS?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember the nomenclature they gave out that, or?
Don't remember.
Well, that's fine. I just.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly what it was.
It's a long
Yeah.
name for. But anyway.
Anyway, I get there and it's already muggy out. It's in March and April. And people are asking me, like, what are you doing here? You're 2 years. I had to join 6 years to get to school. I'm like, I don't know.
You must have tested well.
I think I did, yeah. The questions were pretty much common sense. In
Okay.
the school, I did really well, too. In fact, they ended up watching me, 2 or 3 of them, when I did the tests to see if I was cheating.
See if you.
That was usually the first one done, and it was all simple stuff. It was electric over hydraulic. I did a lot on the elevators that raised the missiles from the bottom of the silo up to shoot. There was lots of little relays back then. It wasn't electronics, it was mechanical things that were going off and making electrical connections. That would start this hydraulic motor and that hydraulic motor. So it was common sense. I caught on to it really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how long was that school? That must have been a long one, huh?
Yeah, it was about 2 months.
Okay,
Yeah.
the usual then.
Yeah, it was around 2 months, yeah.
Okay, that's for your AIT.
Yeah, it was my AIT. And afterward, there was a big map of the United States. Where would you like to be stationed? I'm like, yeah, right.
They asked you?
Yeah, I know where we're going, because they had missiles in Vietnam too. They weren't,
Nuclear,
they
but
were, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I thought it was a joke. So I put down Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota area. So I get orders to go to Minneapolis, St. Paul Air Defense System.
That's what they gave you?
Yes.
Well, you weren't in our military then. You asked for it and you got it?
Yeah.
There's something wrong with that.
I know. It's like they either couldn't pronounce my name or were scared of it and just, okay, give him what he wants. I'm not going to argue with that. I don't know. So then I go on leave home. Of course, you got first class travel on the airplane. I flew out of Kennedy.
Because you're reserves, and that's what's open is first class, which
Yes.
works really
Yeah,
good.
they always paid us first class, to travel.
Yeah.
So I get on the plane and I go, and I didn't know anything about first or second class. I'm sitting about the middle of the plane somewhere, and I didn't even have assigned seats. And the stewardess come up and asked my name, and I said, yes. She said, well, you're first class. Come on up here. At that time, the stewardess were very special ladies.
Mm-hmm.
If they were 30 years old, you had to quit, and they couldn't be overweight, and they were, they were gorgeous.
Right.
They were gorgeous.
Yeah.
So anyway, they brought me up front and brought me a chicken dinner and all the drinks I wanted. Needless to say, we landed in Chicago, switched planes. By the time I got to Grand Forks, shouldn't even say this, but I was in a pretty good mood.
Happy.
My Uncle Frank Safranski picked me up at the airport, and people didn't know I was coming. I surprised my future wife at home. She was pretty ecstatic.
Gene Hebert.
Yep, Gene Hebert. So that was my leave. I think I had a couple weeks of leave then, and then reported to Minneapolis, St. Paul Air Defense. I get to the airport, and I didn't know. I had ordered papers, and so I go up to this guy who's got an Army uniform on. Oh yeah, you're on the list. Come with me.
You were in Class A's at that time, and that's when Vietnam was
Yes.
kind of hot.
Yeah.
Were you, when you went through the airports and stuff, did people treat you okay, or?
It wasn't so bad in Minneapolis. You had these people with their signs, I never got spit at or anything, but they weren't real nice people.
Yeah.
later on, I had a good friend of mine got his brains bashed out with a tire iron just because he was in the service. And he didn't die, but he wasn't normal after
It was a bad time to
It was a
be
bad time.
traveling in your Class A's. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So I got brought out to the base and introduced to the people, and I thought I was going to go down to the missile silos, which we were, our main office and base, and the commander was on the radar part of it. And about 2 miles away was the missile silos where the missiles were kept. Well, I got to know a guy right away the first day. He was in charge of the running generators, the alternate power. If, you know, whenever be a war or attack, we wouldn't have any electricity, so I had 3 big Cat generators in that building, 150 or 15,000 kW. They were huge anyway, generators, 3 of them. So he brought me over there, and then he talked to the battery commander back and forth, and they wanted me to stay there and run generators. So I didn't care. He said, if you go down a missile silo, the food is bad, it's brought there, it's cold by the time it gets there, there's no cook there, and it's not good. So, I stayed there.
So there were silos around Minneapolis?
Yes, they're about 2 miles away, and they were concrete, and they had elevators that I'd worked on, they had air compressors that I worked on.
How many floors down was it?
I would say it wasn't real bad, maybe 25 feet, 30 feet, somewhere in there. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And all that equipment that I had worked on, the air conditioner, that's where I had learned how to recharge air conditioners, what was wrong with them. And it's helped me to this day. I do my own air conditioning things.
Sure.
And so I stayed there, and he taught me how to, you have to synchronize your generator power, voltage, and RPM to get your voltage exactly to match the incoming voltage on your, from the power lines. You got to match the two, and then you switch it over real quickly so you don't lose power, because at the same time, these guys in the radar vans, they're trying to lock on an enemy plane or whatever, and they don't like a drop in power or surge, because it messes up everything. So so I learned that, and the guy who trained me only was there a couple more months, and he got out. So here I'm sitting in an E6 slot, E2. So battery commander says, well, we can't have that, we're gonna give you E3. Okay, take it. So then it wasn't 2 months longer, and E4 board came up. So I went there and all dressed up good, and I had expert qualified. On the base, we didn't carry any rifles, we carried the 45, 1911 45. Qualified expert. I'd done a lot of pistol shooting when I was younger. So I went up for the board and passed. So I'm sitting in E4 with...
And how long have you been in?
Probably about a year.
Boy, you're a suck up, aren't you?
I know. So I'm sitting there, okay, this is as far as I'm going to go. Well, here we hear in one of the bases, a couple of these big Cat generators, Cat engines, had blown up. And there was an investigation, and then we had a big inspection. And a real general was coming to do the inspection. So he comes to my building, and I got it really polished. I did the floors and everything. We painted all the channels, steel channels on the floor with yellow paint, and everything looks beautiful. And he comes in there and he starts ripping me a new one, because he looks at my generator, and on the generator, the hours on that motor didn't match the hours on my control panel. So he pretty much accused me of running these generators without putting them online, without making them pull. They'd blow up. They had to be under load, or they would blow up. So I'd never done that, and I tried to explain. I know that's probably why those other ones blew up, but I had never done that. So he just kind of roughly left. Well, anyway, about 3 weeks later, I get a nice little letter. Well, he asked me, how could there be a difference in them? Well, being from the farm, I'm like, well, maybe they put hours on the motor at breaking it in before we got it hooked to the panel. You know? Well, we'll see about that. So...
Generals are never on.
No. So a couple weeks later, I get called into the First Sergeant's office, and he said, I got a letter here. It's almost an apology from that general. So he read it saying, yes, you were right. We called the cat factory and you were exactly right. They logged hours on this motor, breaking it in on exact loads before it was brought in and connected to the panel. So within a month, an E5 board comes up, and my name is there. And there was people on there that I'm sure were jealous that were giving me questions, but I think his recommendation was put me over the top. So I'm 85 with a year and a half in service.
And with E5 comes the pay.
Yes, I got nice pay. I bought a motorcycle that summer. I also bought an engagement ring. And yeah.
So you made up pretty good there.
Yes.
So you're here. Did you spend your whole tour there then?
Yes.
And you said earlier that you'd had orders for Vietnam a couple times?
Yes. Yes.
How'd that work out? I mean,
well, the first time I came down on orders, the first sergeant told me, and then the battery commander said, well, I don't have it takes a while to train somebody, and you just can't take somebody and do that. I mean, you got to know, you got to change oil in those cats, you got to check the coolant, you have to do tests on the coolant, on the oil, and send that in. They keep you busy doing that stuff.
pretty involved.
Yes, yes. So they didn't have anybody to take my place, so they said, well, your orders are canceled because until we get somebody trained in.
You're just one lucky guy.
Yeah, so it took a long time to get a guy. Well, by then I've got like 3 months left, and I train him in, and I got orders again, but by then it was too late. I was already getting out in a few months.
Okay.
So we were really lucky in one way because we were isolated. We didn't have to get Army chow from the Army depot. They went uptown and bought it at the local grocery store. And because Vietnam was taking so many men, I don't remember the exact amount we were supposed to have, but let's just say we were supposed to have 600 men on the base between everything. We probably had 300. Well, our cook never sent in a request to shorten the amount of money we got for food. We got cash for food. So we had steak, very regular, the best food that you could imagine, yes.
So he used the leftover money to go buy
better stuff,
better
yes,
stuff, yeah.
and plenty of it. And we even had a beer dispenser in the mess hall for a while. But I got abused, of course, GIs abused it, and then they took that out. But.
Sure. So you mustered out there too?
Yes.
And that was probably in 68?
I went in February 20th, 1967, and I got out February 19, 1969.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And you went home?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about when you got home, how it was.
Well, it was farming again, I thought I'd be a farmer. Then I thought I might go to school and this and that. Well, I started farming, and I don't know. I remember one time, I never forgot this. I was taking a shower in the basement. It was in the fall, and I'm like, this is the best time of my life. I'm single yet. I'm out of the service. And gosh, it's great to be 22, 23 years old.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a while back. But
Okay. And so is that what you did the rest of your life, is farm?
I farmed for a while. I actually, farming got kind of bad in 70. It was like a year like this. We got married the 23rd of May. Nobody had turned the wheel, and the fields were all water. So I took a job in Fargo instead of staying home and farming. I had younger brothers that could do it. So I stayed out of farming for about 6 or 7 years, and then came back and did that.
And what'd you do during that time?
I worked for a company called Western Electric.
Okay.
We installed Bell telephone equipment. And
All right. So it's a telephone company.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. And I did well there. I worked my way up to good pay, good position, and but then there was a lawsuit by people saying the Bell was too big, so they broke them up.
Ah, okay.
Broke up Bell, AT&T, and Western Electric, which I worked for. So they dissolved Western Electric. So It's 1975, I think, is when I lost my job. So,
Okay.
and I started looking at farming after that again. Yeah.
All right. And then, are you retired now, or?
Yes, I'm retired now.
Okay.
I farmed till basically 1994, and then I started doing all kinds of jobs. Worked for the elevator, worked for Safranski Plumbing.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. I learned how to wire. In fact, I wired several houses, electrician work in Western Electric.
Okay.
So I learned that, which was a good trade.
All right.
Yeah.
And you're a Legion member?
Yes.
How many years have you been in Legion, Bob?
Well, I gotta check to see if they bridged it, but I would be, since 69, I would be 53 years.
53 years?
Yes.
And-
And when I left, I joined the meeting that my grandpa Bill Safranski, they were giving him his 50th year award.
Really?
Yeah.
That worked out well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're on the honors guard also? Honor
Yes.
squad?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Bill, Bob, I want to thank you for this interview. I know you're well respected in the community, and thank you for your service.
Mhm.